what can we do or say to encourage and support somebody who's a survivor, whether they're an adult or a child? What can we do?
One of the things that I'm always talking to my advocates about is making sure that we stay out of judgment about anything. I think we're learning so much about human consciousness and the way people respond to various stimuli. I'm finding out that compassion is so much more generative and so much more productive, particularly when it comes to victims of violence. And so anything that can come across as some kind of harsh judgment or statement is absolutely to be avoided. And along that same line, I think it's really important that we're speaking to people in language that they can hear, and that is culturally sensitive and appropriate. And so, I mean, it's a big task on caregivers, on advocates, but I think that trauma-informed care and best practices really do call for having robust training around those issues, around cultural issues, trauma-informed care, and best practices. And then, learning how to be kind to ourselves as advocates so that we can be kind to clients is really helpful as well.
So I would be remiss if I didn't point out that if there's child abuse involved, then we're all required to report that, right? As adults in Utah, there is a mandatory reporting law. That said, I think some of outside of the advocate position, as humans, some of the best things that we can do are just to listen. Sometimes the best thing we can do is just to sit with someone in their pain and listen. And if you say anything, it might be something like, "Thank you for sharing that with me. That was very brave. I'm glad you're with me today. I love you." Those are the kinds of responses. So many of us want to fix things so often, and most of us, not everybody on this call, but most of us are not equipped for that. But just really learning how to sit with someone and listen, I think is one of the best things we can do as humans.
This may have already been mentioned, but I'm just going to add, I think in addition to being there and sitting with them and being present, is we just start by believing them. Know that their story is their story and it's their truth, and we can be present in that with them. They're inviting us to be a part of their journey, and it's an honor.
I'd say a very helpful thing is to support them in their decisions and encourage. So often people are experiencing psychological abuse where their loved one is telling them they're idiots, that they can't think straight for themselves, that they could never do without them, that they can't go out on their own, they would be nothing without that person. And there's the gaslighting, which happens where they try to make them think they're crazy. They'll do all kinds of crazy things. I've heard all kinds of different things perpetrators have done to make their spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever, think they were going nuts. So they would question their own judgment and question everything they think is right or feel. Oh, you don't really feel like that. That's not valid. That's not real. So along with what has been said, that validating by listening and validating what they're saying, you are giving them that empowerment, that encouragement to believe in themselves, because that ability has been taken away over months, over years. But a pattern of that kind of behavior towards someone can really whittle away at their ability to act and trust in their own selves. So when you're working with someone, that your friend or a loved one, they're going to make some decisions and you need to support their decisions. They may not be the decisions that you would make. You might think, oh, if they only would just do this, X, Y, and Z. But no, they have to do A, B, and C. Well, support them in A, B, and C, because it's a long road. It's a long road to freedom from abuse. And they have to get some healing along the way. And you can be the beginning of that healing when you're really listening and you're validating their feelings and saying, yeah, I can see why you would feel that way. I can see that why you would think that. That is validating. We don't do enough of it. We're not as good at listening as we used to be. But we need to take the time to, as Chrissy, well, Shirley, they were talking about being present with someone, being there. Turn off your phone. Don't answer your phone. You're with this person who needs someone to hear them because they're not being heard anywhere else. That's huge. I would encourage, well, something very simple. A tip maybe would be to, when someone has, talking to you and finding you a safe person to share with what's been happening to them, that you tell them there are resources out there. There are free and confidential resources available, and offer to let them use your phone. Offer to let them use your computer, because they really shouldn't be accessing those things with their phone or computer if their abusive partner has access to that computer or phone. So that is just a real quick safety tip right there. Is that it's best for them to go to the library and use a library computer, or to access and to read and understand and educate themselves. And you educate yourself too, and understand what resources are out there. There's a national hotline for domestic violence and intimate partner violence. They're going to direct them to the Dove Center if they live in St. George or Washington County or Kane County. So understand, put in the Dove Center 24/7 helpline in your phone. Put the hotline in your phone. Put the suicide hotline in your phone. As Susan Ann said, domestic experiencing this kind of violence from a loved one, and not just the violent part, but the abuse, the emotional and psychological abuse, huge rates of depression and suicidality can result. So be prepared for if someone discloses something to you, be prepared. Thanks.
It's so beautiful, all of the things, they're counting on kindness, they're counting on compassion, they're counting on being believed, they're counting on being listened to, all those things you said. And also, what is it they need? That's something, what in this moment do you need? We have all these things in our head about the ideas that we possibly could help them with, but what's their immediate need? Because usually they're in crisis in the moment we first interface with them, and they may not know too. So it's tricky.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great point that, they may be in crisis. And so let's not forget that one of those important pieces that we need to do is, if we see something happening, that we need to make sure that we reach out and report it, because sometimes reporting these incidents is what really opens up the resources and allows our survivors to be able to be pointed in the right direction. It's not always, going to end in the situation that everybody wants at that particular moment, but sometimes maybe the interaction and intervention from victims advocate, from law enforcement, from all these different entities can actually provide the survivor with the confidence to be able to get out.
So we've talked extensively about what we can do to help. What should we avoid saying or doing if somebody comes to us telling about their abusive experiences?
So one of the things I wanted to kind of highlight about what Elizabeth already said was really imposing decisions on people. It's like, I know it would be in your best interest to do X, Y, Z. And I see this so many times, so very often for me when I'm dealing with, it's usually women who have suffered domestic violence, is that they have been undermined so badly in their decision making that we don't think they're making good decisions for themselves. And so we want to impose decisions on them. And all that does is further undermine their ability and self-determination. And so I just, I think the tendency and the desire to make things better for people, we very frequently disable them by doing things and doing things to them that we think are going to be good for them. And so, avoiding taking responsibility and ownership of their situation and of their decisions is a huge part.
And to that, one of the best things we can do to help protect kids throughout their lifetimes would be to teach them that they have that power to make decisions and to help them learn how to make a decision at a young age, and give them confidence to be able to do that. It's a great protective factor going forward.
And adding to that, teaching the caregiver how to give the child choices and safe and healthy and age appropriate choices so that they can have adequate power in their life and know that they can be in charge of what happens to their body and they can be in charge of what happens in their life to an extent.
Simply avoid anything that statements or questions around the victim's behavior that could imply that something they did or didn't do was causing this abuse, because it's just not true. The only person accountable for this kind of behavior is the perpetrator of the behavior.
And I would say, I know this is true with kiddos, and I'm going to assume it's true with adults as well, not to probe because we're curious. We can be interested in the individual without having to know every sordid detail. It's not helpful for them or appropriate, and it can actually be harmful in a case later on if we do too much probing. You never stop somebody from telling you something, but don't keep pushing for details.
And adding to that, let their story be their story. Don't repeat it to others. I mean, this seems like common sense, but for some reason it's not. If somebody makes a disclosure to you, you don't go dial up all the neighbors in the area saying, oh, did you hear about so-and-so and this is going on in their family, or even confront their perpetrator. That's nothing. You never, ever want to do that. Their story is their story and let them be in charge of it. Don't disempower them one more time.
On top of that, I want to talk just briefly about being mandated reporters. That becomes a really tricky situation really quickly. And we're all mandated reporters in the state of Utah. All adults are considered mandated reporters, which means that if an underage adult or someone who's disabled or elderly says anything about being harmed by someone else, any kind of abuse happening to them, violence, self-harm, etc., we have to, well, not necessarily self-harm, but like we have to make reports on that. And that can be really scary for kids, especially if they weren't aware before they disclose to you. So I make it a best practice to let all the kids that I work with know what being a mandated reporter means, because giving them that option and that independence to take that choice into their own hands and know what's going to happen when they talk to me is really important in giving them their power back. And then if they weren't aware of mandated reporting or if they forgot, having them be a part of the process is so important. So of course, listening to their story and validating them and not probing too deep, but then saying, hey, because of my role as an adult and that I want to keep you safe, this is something that I am going to have to make a call about. Who's a safe person that could be here with you while we do this? And would you like to be on that call with me? I know that this is really scary, so if we need to take a minute to do some deep breaths, I understand. And I want you to know I'm not trying to hurt you. I just, this is something that I need to do to make sure that you're safe. And just giving them as much independence as you can in that situation so that they're a part of this decision-making process and they still have their dignity and their independence is really important.
I'd like to add with mandated reporting, if you're ever not sure, talk to somebody about it. You could still call the reporting line if you're not sure if it's not ever your job to determine if it's abuse. It's your job to just report it. There are other people that will investigate it and figure it out for you. So if you're concerned, if something doesn't feel right, talk to somebody, call the hotline.
Yeah, the law actually reads they don't have to tell you something happened. You don't have to see that it happened. You just have to have reason to believe that it happened. So yeah, there are investigators whose job it is to investigate, and let's let them do that job. I don't want that job.